The Seahawks were supposed to suffer through a bad year in 2022. They didn't. They made it to the postseason, and yeah, it was one and done, but nobody expected them to get to the playoffs. Nobody expected them to be above 500. They finished 9-8. They rewarded Geno Smith, who started all 17 regular season games for the Seattle Seahawks. But there has been chatter from Coach Pete Carroll, whether it's posturing for a trade out or not. He has openly spoken about the possibility of taking a quarterback with the 5th overall pick in the draft. Here's Geno Smith from the press conference on Thursday regarding the possibility that the Seahawks will do just that.
If a young quarterback were to be drafted, would you view that as competition, as a mentorship opportunity? How would you see that?
I'll say it's both. I love to compete, so I compete with anybody. But I'm also going to, help them out as much as I can, the same as, we did with Drew. And our QB room is so tight-knit, and we're all so connected that we act as one. And so whether it's a young guy or someone else, I'm going to help that player, just like any other player on our team, be the best that he can be, because that's my job as a leader, and that's who I am at heart. I'm never going to withhold information. I'm always going to try and help guys get better. And so that's what I want to do, and if that happens, then that's the guy I'll be.
It's the right attitude. It's not easy to do. It's easy to say. It's harder to do. I'm not saying he won't do it, but when you're the guy that you believe has earned a spot as the starter for more than a year or two, and they go out and draft a quarterback with the 5th overall pick, and all of a sudden you're holding the job for maybe one more year at the most, may be hard to process. And, the bottom line, Peter, we heard 3 years, $105 million the other day, which is the ritual as it relates to the leaking of information by agents to reporters who rush to Twitter without ever asking, is this really what it is? Is this the real number? Is this the truth? If you pause, someone else tweets it before you and gets the credit for it. So it doesn't matter if it's not the truth, and I think they all recognize it as an occupational hazard. Bottom line is this. 3 years, 105 is actually 1 year, 28. And after this year, the Seahawks can move on if they want to. Or it's 2 years, 50. Or 3 years, 75. He's got incentives that he will earn if he exceeds what he did last year in one or more of 5 statistical categories, so he can make more than that. It's not incentives, it's escalators. It pushes up next year's salary. And the reality is he could hit all of them this year. He could bump his pay next year by $15 million. They could still cut him after 1 year, $28 million. That's the thing to remember. And it's not as crazy as it used to be, because that's exactly what the Raiders did to Derek Carr. After we heard last year, $40.5 million per year, $40.5 million per year. He got $25 million and a pink slip. That's what happened, and that's what could happen to Geno Smith, especially Peter King, if they use that 5th overall pick on a quarterback.
Well, here's the interesting thing I think we found in the last week or so, Mike. That is that if you look at, I've been saying this for months, really. I said, whatever happened to the middle class of quarterbacks? It's like it's non-existent. Either you make 40 or more, or you make 8. I mean, there's just, and I'm exaggerating, obviously, but there was not a middle class for quarterbacks where you say, there's nobody in his right mind who's going to say that Geno Smith should be making what Patrick Mahomes makes, obviously. And, but the NFL, to me, had overpaid a lot of guys teams had overpaid a lot of guys who were good quarterbacks, but we don't know if they're great yet. And so to me, the Derek Carr contract in New Orleans, the Geno Smith contract in Seattle, and probably we'll see what the real money is with Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know. It's probably going to be a little bit more than both of those guys, I would think. But the bottom line in this is, I think there's a little bit of quarterback sanity returning to the market. Especially, I thought the Derek Carr contract was interesting because, as you know, Mike, and you wrote about it, it's not 4 years, 150. It's 3 years, 100. Because essentially, the $50 million in year 4 is totally unguaranteed. You could have put $90 million in year 4. What does it matter? It doesn't matter because it's like that weird Taysom Hill contract that Mickey Loomis did, I don't know, a year or two ago, where it was $1 jillion, but everybody knew it wasn't $1 jillion. And so to me, I think that what we're going to see is just a little bit more sanity on the quarterback coach front, or quarterback contract front, but not obviously as it applies to Burrow, Herbert, and Lamar Jackson. You wouldn't think.
And here's the other reality, too, because Geno Smith could have refused to sign a deal with the Seahawks and forced them to choose between applying the franchise tag or letting him become a free agent. And hey, $32.4 million is better than $28 million. Why not do that? What happens in advance of this? For the agents who do a good job by their clients, even though the teams involved in those conversations are violating the tampering rules, it happens all the time, the agent has to go find out what's behind door number 2. It becomes a lot easier to take the Seahawks deal, which may not be what you had hoped for after becoming comeback player of the year and completing 69.8% of your passes and throwing for 4,200 plus yards. It may not be what you thought you were going to get, but it still may be better than what interest may be out there elsewhere. And that's the reality. I didn't hear that there was any other team that was lurking in the weeds waiting for the opportunity to pounce on Geno Smith and give him $40 million a year. It just wasn't there. Because it's one season. And I don't want to take away from a great season, but it's just like Daniel Jones. What investment are you going to make in a guy who had one great season? And hey, the Giants at the end of the day go $37.5 million, and that's still a deal that can be escaped after 2 years, 82. They can walk away. But how much of an investment do you make when you don't have the track record? And I think if Geno Smith's agent did the job the right way, he knew exactly what else was out there or not out there when he took that deal. And you're right, Peter, this is where that middle class may start to emerge. You can't have guys making 50, 55 million and then this glaring aberration of Patrick Mahomes at 45 and have lesser quarterbacks in the 40s and near 45. It just can't happen. And that's what'll make it fascinating. Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts. Where do they land on this accordion that's starting to get stretched at the quarterback position?
I think the other interesting thing that's going to happen this offseason, Mike, is the discussion of guaranteed money, which I think for most quarterbacks, I would say with the exception of Lamar Jackson. And we can talk about that when we talk about Lamar Jackson. But to me, if I'm Mike Brown, if I'm Dean Spanos, if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I understand that I'm going to really tick off the other owners in the league and management council and all that. But in my opinion, the guaranteed money for Joe Burrow and for Justin Herbert in particular, in the last 2 years, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, neither of these players, despite getting banged around a lot, and Justin Herbert with his ribs, neither of these players has missed any significant time because of injury. And so if you have to give out big guarantees to those guys, first of all, what's the problem with guarantees? There's two problems. Number one, the NFL doesn't want to give out total guarantees on contracts for obvious reasons. It sets a precedent. Players get hurt, blah, blah, blah. But the second thing is you know, and we've talked about it on this show, is the fact that if Joe Burrow is signed to a contract for $250 million guaranteed by Mike Brown and the Bengals, they have to put into escrow some gigantic money, like depending on how it's structured, let's say $180 million into escrow. Mike Brown, it's a family-run team. I'm not saying they can't find $180 million. They can find $180 million. However, what do you do when Jamar Chase comes up? What do you do now when you have to figure out what to do with T. Higgins? What do you do when you've got other great players who you have to take care of? The Bengals don't have $300 or $400 million to put in escrow to pay most or all of their great players, guaranteed contracts. That is the biggest issue by far. But to me, is there any question to you? I mean, if the Bengals gave Burrow a 4-year, $200 million contract, they're not cutting him in the next 4 years. So however you term the money, guaranteed, whatever it is, Joe Burrow is going to be on your team for the next 4 years. And so that, to me, is one of the great kind of vagaries of this entire problem. Many quarterbacks, you can say, they deserve full or almost full guarantees. And I'd be a lot more willing to give Jalen Hurts more guaranteed money right now than I would be Lamar Jackson because of Lamar Jackson's injury history. But again, there are other issues other than simply saying that the contract is guaranteed.
I remember having a conversation with a prominent agent several years ago as it relates to quarterback contracts, and the reality is, and I think Joe Burrow is in this category, Justin Herbert will be in the category, Jalen Hurts to a certain extent, you don't need to have guaranteed contracts for quarterbacks because they never get cut prematurely. Teams, now, the pendulum has moved from what it used to be, because what it used to be was when you had a guy who was just on the right side of the pass-fail line, you never got rid of him. We have seen over recent years teams more and more willing to move on from guys who were just good enough in the hopes of getting a guy who would be just great enough. But not long ago, the approach was you sign the quarterback to the long-term deal, and he's going to cash every check. He's going to make every penny. It's going to become a team-friendly deal on the back end. Aaron Rodgers used to do 6-year deals, and there was never talk about, Packers better think about whether or not they're going to continue this contract. It's non-guaranteed. They can get out of it. And I think, Peter, with the proliferation of mobile quarterbacks who run horizontally and vertically, put themselves in harm's way greater than the traditional pocket quarterback, that's where guaranteed contracts become more important, because there is a greater chance of missed time. There is a greater chance of serious injury. There's a greater chance you're going to have your hands tied by a guaranteed contract that you would rather get out of if you can. And the funding rule, it really is the other part of it. The funding rule is a vestige of the days when the owners didn't have the money they have today, and there was concern that these players with guaranteed contracts, were going to get stiffed. That's not a concern now. They all have the money to pay these contracts, but the NFL refuses to let go of the funding rule because that provides the easy justification for the ongoing collusion when it comes to the refusal to give guaranteed contracts. So I don't think Herbert needs one. I don't think Burrow needs one. Jalen Hurts needs one a little bit more than those guys, but not like Lamar Jackson. The reason Lamar Jackson's trying to get one is because of his playing style, the way the Ravens use him. They don't have to use him the way they use him. They use him in a way that puts him at greater risk. So it really isn't all that unreasonable when you think about it for him to want protection that if he was a pocket passer, he wouldn't need.
And I think there's going to be all of these issues, especially now because so many marquee quarterbacks are due for new contracts. I mean, if you have 4 of the top 10 quarterbacks in one offseason that either are going to get done or are eligible to get done for long-term contracts, it becomes a really big deal. Remember how for like 2 years it was just Dak Prescott constantly? These guys are going to kind of divvy up the headlines. The one reason why, other than in the case of Lamar Jackson, why I don't really care about it that much is that Jalen Hurts is going to quarterback the Philadelphia Eagles next year. Joe Burrow is going to quarterback the Bengals. And Justin Herbert is going to quarterback the Chargers. The only one that has some significant doubt is Lamar Jackson. And that's why, the one thing that's changed in 39 years covering the NFL, at least for me, is that this ceaseless discussion of contracts, it just never ends. And I don't really have a lot of interest in it. And I understand it's a part of the game and people, I guess, are interested in it. But I think
I'll show you my traffic numbers. I'll show you. I can prove it to you that they are. Yeah. I give the people what they want.
It's fine. And you should. if that's what people care about. I don't. And I care about football. I just, it just, to me, it's so much palaver. Why would anybody care, really, if you love
Bing,
the Bengals?
there it is. There it is.
Any danger?
SAT word.
Is that
40 minutes in. Palaver. Sorry.
Listen. Is there any, Mike, is there any scenario that you think Joe Burrow will not be the quarterback of the Bengals opening day, barring an injury?
In 2023? No, there's no scenario. Long term?
Right.
I think the jury is still
maybe
sort of out.
Yeah.
Right? We know what happened 3 years ago. We know that if he was from Athens, Georgia, and not Athens, Ohio, he would have told the Bengals to
might have
draft
told
someone
the Bengals,
else. I was
but
looking,
there would have been a lot.
Might have.
There would have been a lot better chance. Yes. Right. I get that. You're absolutely right. But anyway, my only point is there's really no chance he's not going to be the quarterback of the Bengals opening day this year. Okay. And yet,
correct.
We will be bombarded. With 492,000 contract stories about Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert between now and Labor Day weekend. I have
correct.
zero I won't read a single one of them. I don't care.
But see, Peter, I'm not necessarily trying to persuade you to care, because if you don't care, you just
won't
don't
be
care.
able to.
I don't care if you don't. I don't care if you don't care. But my point is this: as we have more and more of these quarterbacks landing on this spectrum, I mean, what fascinates me is, where should they fit? What will they do to the bar? What will it do to other teams in the future? I think it's a far more important than you're giving it credit for. Far more important point, because how are teams going to be able to build their rosters? How do you balance it out? I mean, you're making the case for middle of the road, and middle of the road allows teams to go out and spend money on other good players. You get a quarterback that's determined to make more money than anybody else, or a team that does a contract like the Matthew Stafford deal that puts them in a spot where any move they make is going to be cap hell. That's where it becomes fascinating. As these newer quarterbacks get their contracts, where will those darts land on the board, and what will it do to the team's ability to be competitive? And then what precedent does that set for the next guy's contract? That's why I think it's fascinating, because it goes to the heart of the quality of the team that's going to be around these quarterbacks.
It's all monopoly money. If Joe Burrow is going to make a contract that averages, let's pick a number out of the sky, $53 million a year, let's just say. 5 years, $53 million. Maybe they add a couple of phony years for cap purposes onto the end. Okay, so the first couple of years are going to be low. That's the way contracts are done these days. Mega contracts, always the first couple of years are low. They'll figure it out. And then starting in about 2026 or whatever it'll be, maybe 2025, then you're going to start to get, okay, 50 million, 58 million, 63 million, all that stuff. And look, the salary cap is probably going to eat it up the same way that the salary cap does now. And you know why I call it monopoly money? Because Joe Burrow's contract probably on average will be about, I'm going to guess, 17 or 18% of the Bengals salary cap over the next 5 or 6 years. Let's just say. What do you think Peyton Manning's was? About 17 or 18%. Now, Brady's was less because Brady took less money, and he's probably going to be the only quarterback of our lifetime who consistently took less money most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time to play. But the fact is, 17% of the cap is 17% of the cap. If the cap is going to be $290 million, and 17% of 290 million still leaves you whatever the number is, $230 million to build your roster. If you can't do that, go be a GM in the XFL.
Right, Peter, but the fact that Tom Brady consistently took less than he could have and should have gotten contributed to all those Super Bowls he won. And we have a guy named Patrick Mahomes who is already on that track.
That's the point.
With the ultra long-term deal. I know. That's why it's so fascinating. Is Joe Burrow going to go 53 or 43? Is he going to lock in for 10 years at low money and give maximum flexibility to Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor to go out there and have great players around him? Or is he going to take the Peyton Manning approach where it's my job to get paid as much as I can, it's your job to manage the salary cap? That's why these person by person, player by player, the uniquely individual mindset that applies. What's important? Are you and look, I always say get paid what you can while you can, because the moment they decide you're not good enough is the moment they're not paying you anything. But are you concerned about your legacy? Are you concerned about how many Super Bowls you can win? And if you're the one guy in Patrick Mahomes that is willing to consistently take less when everyone else is being pig at the trough, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, that's just the metaphor I chose to use, then Mahomes is going to benefit from it. And Mahomes is going to win more Super Bowls. And at the end of the day, it puts him on track to catch Tom Brady, the guy who was the one who consistently took far less. And what it did, and by him consistently taking far less, go ahead.
And the question is, I had this put to me, this was almost 20 years ago. This was when Brady was doing his second contract. As somebody who knew Brady told me, he goes, hey, listen, why wouldn't Tom do this? And I said, well, okay, he wants to win. He said, but wait a minute. You have to think of something. Tom's got a couple of Super Bowls now. If you've won a couple of Super Bowls, you're young, you're handsome, everybody loves you. If you won a couple of Super Bowls and you're Tom Brady, you can go somewhere and sign footballs for 3 hours and make $1 million. Or maybe not $1 million, I'm exaggerating, but whatever it is, you can make a boatload of money off the field easily. So, and this is something that, look, this is the way I would be, okay? Because if I play this game, I would want to win desperately. And I would want, because look, in my job, Mike, I want to win on Mondays. When I write my column, I want to write stuff on Mondays that nobody else has, that I'm going to have stuff that and it's a very competitive business. I want to win. So, and I don't particularly care. I mean, I'm very well compensated and I'm not given a dime back. I get that. But my whole point is, if you're a quarterback and you're mega famous and you can make $1 jillion off the field, just answer this question. I'd love to hear your thought. But if you knew that you had a smart general manager like Brett Veach, if you knew you had a smart coach like Andy Reid, if you trusted the scouts and the guys who work for your team and your coaches and knew that if I'm not a pig at the trough, they're going to be able to build a better team, and I can go out and make all these other marketing deals and make probably $15 million off the field by doing pretty minimal work in the offseason, why wouldn't you do that? That's my only question about all this.
See, I think you're far more interested in this dynamic than you'll admit, because that's the question. And you look around the league and you do have guys that don't care about that. You have guys that want to get maximum compensation. Daniel Jones and his agents were trying to get $45 million plus per year from the Giants. What's that going to do to the effort of Daniel Jones and the Giants to go win Super Bowls? Now, at the end of the day, it was far less, and maybe they were just posturing to get the best possible deal. But when you look at it, Peter, they're paying him $10 million more per total, $10 million total over the next 2 years than they would have paid him under 2 years of the franchise tag. So there's a premium that was being paid here. He got more than what the Giants could have given him if they just would have gone tag and tag in 23 and 24. So that's the balance. How much more do you want than enough? Whatever enough is. And that's the age-old question. How much is enough? Countering that is the reality that every dime you leave on the table is another dime that stays in the coffers of ownership. Maybe they'll spend them all. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll be devoted to the next generation super yacht that the owner is floating around the Mediterranean on. That's the other side of it. The money's there. How much of it am I going to insist on? How much of it am I going to leave behind for my teammates? And how much of it is going to be siphoned off as raw profit by the owner. That's the one part that never gets discussed. We assume that all the money that Patrick Mahomes leaves behind is going to get reinvested in the roster. I think for some of these teams, anybody that's not spending up to the cap, anybody that's carrying a $100 million cap space bulge, that money's already been jammed into someone's pockets. The question is that money coming back out? So, yeah, I guess to answer your question, I'd be fine with taking less as long as I knew that every single penny I left behind would be spent on other players.
And you would know that, Mike. You would know that very simply. All you would have to do is tell your agent, look, I'm not going to study over the cap every month. I don't care. Okay, but your job is to tell me, let's say we've signed a 4-year deal and I'm a great player and I'm a superstar and my next contract comes up and I'm 30 years old. Okay, if you tell me they did not spend to the cap in 3 of these 4 years and they saved this money, they blah, 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 whatever. If I find out, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you, or whatever that cliche is. But I'm not believing it again. So this time, I'm not playing for a dime less than my full market value. But I'm going to give my team, if I trust my team, I'm going to give them the chance to be honorable about it and to say, we'll spend to the cap. And then I'm going to see if you spend to the cap.
I think the proper articulation of that cliche is, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, can't get fooled again.
Yes.
I think that if
fool,
you find,
no,
if you
fool me
search that
twice,
on YouTube,
shame on me. That's right.
I know.
That's
I know.
Right. Yeah.
I was being a smart ass because a certain commander in chief once butchered it. Fool me, can't get fooled again. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.